Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the new Brit workshop and part 2 of my introduction to the Festool OF 1010 writer. Now in this part I'm going to give you a very brief overview of trammel work with this writer, and also how the writer can be used with the Leigh dovetail jig to make some quite nice dovetail joints. Well, I'm now going to do a quick bit of trammel work, and I've got my trammel which I made up ages ago. I'm sure I made a video about this, and it's got a 30mm hole here. And the idea is that you'd put a guide bush on your writer, and then the writer can sit on there, and it's located because of the guide bush. This is the guide bush from my OF 1400 writer, and that just clips into the writer base, so it's very easy to attach and detach. Now, in the case of the OF 1010, one has to remove the plastic part of the base and then screw a guide bush on there. Now, I don't have any of the Festool guide bushes like this, but I have got the guide bush adapter for the Leigh dovetail jig, and this is the Leigh 704R adapter. And I've screwed that just loosely in place at the moment because I need to get it centered. I'm going to use this centering Mandrel, which is a Festool product, and it's got an 8mm section of shaft there and a either 6 or 1/4 inch section of shaft there. But I've got an 8mm collet, so I'm going to push that right in like that. And I'm now going to tighten up the collet so that's held firmly in place. Now, this is circular, it's now mounted in the collet, and so if I now get it pushed towards this guide bush adapter, it's going to centre it. There we go, I've released the clamp there, and that now is centred. So I'm going to tighten up, but as you tighten, you first of all need to do it evenly, but you do need to make sure you're applying a little bit of pressure to make sure that in screwing it, it doesn't send it off slightly. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure on the mandrel, and I'm pulling upwards towards me on the casting under here of the writer. And now I'm going to tighten up, and that should then be centered. As I said, I'm doing it evenly, and that's it, and that looks pretty good. So I can now remove the mandrel. You may be wondering why I'm using this Leigh guide bush adapter. Well, I don't have any of the Festool guide bushes for the OF 1010, and so I do have the UJK guide bush set, which you may have seen in other videos I've made. And in there is a 30mm guide bush, and so I can take that and the tightening ring. I insert the 30mm guide bush in the template, it fits perfectly, and then tighten it up from the rear. And before I put the cutter in, I'm just going to put this piece of plastic back in, and that goes here on top of the plastic shroud that aids the dust extraction. So that's in place, and I'm now going to put the cutter in. So we're just about all set up. Now the next thing I need to do is to set my cutter depth, and for this I need to mount the writer on the trammel, and you can see now how that guide bush fits neatly into the hole on there. And I'm going to use our same technique we've used before, lower the cutter down until it's touching the surface of the wood, or the worktop in this case. Then I'm going to lower this down and get this in the 0 position, and then raise this up, and then lock that in the new position. And now when I do that plunge, it's going to drop down the amount I've set there, which is 3mm. So all I'm left to do now is to make a hole for my trammel point, and I've already marked that. That's that. I've got my trammel point here. I'm not going to go through the setup procedure for this trammel, but suffice it to say that it's adjustable, and one can check the radius very easily. I'm going to pop that in there. So we're ready to go. Now the beauty of this trammel design is that the writer can stay facing the same orientation, so the hose is always poking out towards me. I don't have to go around the whole table, I can do it all from one position. I'll start by doing the plunge and then I'll go all the way around in the circle. And there you can see a perfectly circular hole for whatever purpose it might be. Right, I'm now going to set up the 1010 to do dovetailing with the Leigh Dovetail jig. I've already got the Leigh guidebush adapter, the 704R, fitted in the base here, and it's been centered using the Mandrel. But what I've now got to do is to use the correct Leigh Dovetail guidebush that fits into the guidebush adapter for the work that I'm about to do. So first of all, I'm going to install the guidebush in the guidebush adapter. And once it's in, make sure it's tight. And now we have to put the dovetail bit in, but we have to lower the plunge mechanism a bit, otherwise we're not going to get it in safely deep enough. So that's in and it's nice and tight. One needs to get the depth set for the particular cutter, and what I've done in the past is to do a little trial cut in something, this is probably a better example, and then marked what cutter it is. This is my new piece of wood, so once I've got it set absolutely correctly, I will then put this new cutter in there, and that'll be another reference point. So that's my depth set. Now I'm not going to go into any more detail about setting up the Leigh Dovetail jig, and the router setup I've described it as it is for the 1010. The only thing I'll remind you is that if you're using the Leigh Dovetail jig, I really recommend the vacuum support as your principal method of dust extraction. So I'm all ready to go, so let's give it a try. Well, actually, I could do just a slight bit of adjustment on that, but that's only a question of setting up the jig. But you can see the point. Using the Festool 1010 is actually very easy when it comes to dovetailing work. Now, someone has pointed out to me that Leigh do some cutters which are only on 1/2-inch shank. I think there are only 4 of them, and they're for through dovetails. They're quite large dovetails. I don't have any of those. All of my Leigh cutters are 8mm shank, so therefore everything I've got I can do with the OF 1010. If you have the odd cutter which is half inch, well, I'm afraid then you've got to use the OF 1400, which is what I used to do, and it works perfectly well. But I do like this. It's a little bit lighter and it's nice and easy. Now, I've been using the OF 1010 for over 4 weeks now, and I really like it. I like it because it doesn't weigh too much. I like it because it's easy to handle and easy to set up. I like it particularly because of the superb dust collection. You do need to bear in mind that the maximum collet size is 8mm, but that's not a big deal when you see the superb range of cutters like these, which come from Festool, all on 8mm shafts. Now, there's just one thing I'd like to point out, and that is where this dust port comes out from the side means that the hose is almost parallel to the surface you're working on, and you just need to watch that hose doesn't catch as you're manoeuvring the router. It's not a big deal, but it's just something to bear in mind. Now, you've seen me do all sorts of things with this router, and I really do recommend that if you're going to purchase one of these, that you get the set version. And that then gives you the guide rail adapter, the side fence, and so on. It's really worth it. If you then want to look at extras, the first extra I suggest is a must-have, and that is the centering mandrel. And that will be useful not only with this router, but any other routers that you might have. And my next recommendation would be the edge trimming set, and for me that's the 3 items of the angle arm, the edging plate, and this chip deflector. and those make the OF1010 into a very useful edge trimming writer. Now the OF1010 will work perfectly well in the Festool writer table, the CMS OF which I have behind me. But really you need to have something like the OF 1400 or the OF 2200 writers to do justice to a writer table, because you want to be able to use bigger cutters, and certainly those with 1/2 inch shafts. And so I would not recommend this for the writer table, but it works in there perfectly well. So that's the Festool OF1010. It's a beautiful machine, it's really well made, dust collection outstanding. But don't take my word for it. Go to your dealer and see if you can have a go with one. If not, go to a show and see one demonstrated. Certainly pick one up and feel the quality. It's well worth it. And whilst you're at it, take a look at the Festool writer cutters. And that's what I've been using for the majority of the shots that you've seen in these two films. They're beautifully made as well. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.